The moment Elena's bare feet touched the sacred grounds of Wolf Park, every wolf within 100 miles lifted their heads, because for the first time in 3 centuries, the ancient mating stones began to bleed. Elena Blackwood felt the earth pulse beneath her feet like a heartbeat. She told herself it was nerves. Just nerves. Nothing more than the anxiety of standing among thousands of wolves when she'd spent the last 5 years running from everything supernatural. The Wolf Park gathering sprawled across 300 acres of protected forest in northern Montana. Wolves from every territory in North America had converged here, setting up camps beneath towering pines, their scents mingling until the air felt thick enough to chew. Elena had never seen so many of her kind in one place. Her disbanded pack had numbered 43 before the attack that scattered them. Before her parents died. Before everything fell apart. She shouldn't be here. But Grammy had begged. On her deathbed, with tubes in her arms and monitors beeping their countdown, she'd grabbed Elena's wrist with surprising strength. "Go to the gathering," she'd rasped. "Promise me. You'll find what was stolen." Elena had promised. She'd do anything for the woman who'd raised her after the attack, who'd hidden her among humans and taught her to suppress her wolf until most days Elena forgot she had one at all. Now Grammy was 3 weeks in the ground, and Elena was honoring a promise she didn't understand. She moved through the crowd, keeping her head down. Her wolf stirred restlessly, the first real movement from that part of herself in years. Being surrounded by so many of her kind seemed to be waking something she tried very hard to keep asleep. "Omega," someone muttered as she passed. She felt their dismissive glance like a physical touch. Her wolf was weak, barely a whisper compared to the dominant energies radiating from the wolves around her. At the bottom of every hierarchy. Worthless. She'd heard it all before. The ceremonial grounds occupied the heart of Wolf Park, a natural amphitheater where ancient stones rose in a circle around a central platform. The mating stones. Grammy had told her stories about them as a child. How the moon goddess had placed them here at the dawn of wolfkind. How they sang when true mates found each other. How they'd been silent for generations now, the old magic fading from a world that had forgotten how to believe. Tonight, they weren't silent. Elena heard it the moment she entered the amphitheater, a low hum, almost subsonic, vibrating through her bones. The wolves around her shifted uneasily. They heard it too. Felt it. And then she saw the blood. Dark liquid seeped from the ancient granite, trickling down the carved surfaces like tears. Like wounds. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone screamed. Elena stood frozen, watching crimson pool on the sacred earth, and her wolf, her quiet, suppressed, half-forgotten wolf, threw back her head inside Elena's mind and howled. "The stones," someone whispered. "The mating stones are bleeding. That's impossible. That hasn't happened since 300 years. The last prophecy." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She should leave. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to disappear back into the human world where things made sense. Where ancient stones didn't bleed and her wolf didn't howl and she wasn't standing in the middle of thousands of supernatural creatures who would tear her apart if they knew. Knew what? She didn't even know what she was hiding from. Trumpets sounded. The crowd surged toward the amphitheater's center, and Elena found herself carried along with them, helpless against the tide. Bodies pressed close. The scent of so many wolves overwhelmed her senses. She fought to breathe. "The Alpha King," someone said. "He's coming." Elena had heard of Dominic Valerius. Everyone had. He ruled the Northern Territories, the largest, most powerful werewolf domain in the Western Hemisphere. He claimed his throne at 22 after his father's assassination, had spent a decade consolidating power and crushing anyone who challenged him. Ruthless. Brutal. Unmated, despite countless she-wolves throwing themselves at his feet. The crowd parted. He walked through them like a blade through silk, and Elena forgot how to breathe. Dominic Valerius stood well over 6 feet, built like a warrior born. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from the same ancient stone that bled around them, all sharp angles and hard lines, and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. His eyes were the pale gray of winter storms, and they swept the crowd with cold assessment. Power rolled off him in waves. Elena felt it press against her skin, her wolf cowering and whimpering in submission. Every wolf in the amphitheater felt it. Heads bowed. Shoulders hunched. Even the most dominant alphas looked away. Dominic mounted the ceremonial platform and stood before the bleeding stones. His gaze moved across the gathered wolves. And then those storm-gray eyes found Elena. The mate bond hit her like a lightning strike. She heard herself cry out, felt her knees buckle. Pleasure and pain twisted together, racing through her veins like fire. Her wolf exploded to life inside her, fully awake for the first time in years, straining toward the man on the platform with desperate, clawing need. Mine, her wolf howled. Mate. Mine. Dominic Valerius staggered. The entire gathering went silent. The most powerful alpha king in werewolf history. The man who'd never shown weakness, never faltered, never bowed, had just stumbled like a pup taking his first steps. His beta rushed forward, but Dominic held up a hand, stopping him. Those gray eyes hadn't left Elena's face. She saw the moment he felt the bond. Saw it slam into him with the same devastating force. His pupils dilated. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Something raw and hungry flashed across his features. Then she watched him lock it down. Watched him bury it beneath ice. No, he said. His voice carried across the silent amphitheater, deep and cold. No. Elena's wolf whimpered. She pushed through the crowd toward him, drawn by a force she couldn't fight. Couldn't understand. The bond pulled at her like a physical rope, and she had no choice but to follow. Please, she heard herself whisper when she reached the platform's edge. Begging. She'd never begged anyone for anything. But her wolf was wild with need, and the pain of his rejection was already starting to claw at her insides. Please, I don't understand. Dominic looked down at her. For one moment, something flickered in his eyes, grief, rage, a desperate longing that matched her own. Then his face hardened to stone. I, Dominic Valerius, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. No. The word ripped from Elena's throat. Her wolf thrashed in terror. Around them, wolves gasped, understanding what was coming. Reject you as my mate. The bond tore. Elena screamed. She never felt pain like this, like something fundamental was being ripped from her chest. She collapsed, her body convulsing, and distantly heard the crowd shouting, felt hands trying to hold her down. But through the agony, she felt something else. The bond stretched. It burned like acid, agonizing and raw. But it didn't break. Dominic felt it too. She saw him grab his chest, saw shock crack through his icy composure. The rejection wasn't completing. The bond refused to snap. Blood poured from the mating stones, faster now, soaking into the earth. Take her to the healing tents, Dominic commanded. His voice had gone hoarse. Now. Hands lifted Elena. She was fading, consciousness slipping away, but she kept her eyes on Dominic's face. On the man who just rejected her. Her mate. Her enemy. Why? She wanted to scream. What did I do? But the darkness was pulling her under, and the last thing she saw was Dominic Valerius watching her being carried away, his hands still pressed to his chest where the bond still burned. My king! Marcus, his beta and the closest thing Dominic had to a friend, fell into step beside him as he strode away from the ceremonial grounds. What just happened? That girl, she's your true mate. I felt the bond from 20 feet away. Everyone did. Why would you? Don't. Dominic didn't stop walking. His wolf was tearing at his insides, howling with rage at what he'd just done. Rejecting their mate. Their true mate, the one the moon goddess herself had chosen. The one the bleeding stones had announced. Dom. Marcus grabbed his arm. Talk to me. I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you lose control like that. And the rejection didn't even work. The bond is still. I know. Dominic wrenched free. He could feel it. That golden thread connecting him to the Omega girl, stretched tight and screaming with pain but stubbornly, impossibly intact. I know it didn't work. Then why? She's your mate. You've waited 20 years for her. Why reject her in front of the entire supernatural world? Dominic stopped. He stood at the edge of the tree line, staring into the darkness of the forest. His wolf paced and snarled, furious and wounded. Did you see her face? He asked quietly. Marcus frowned. She's beautiful. Small, but... Her face. Dominic repeated. Her eyes. The shape of her jaw. The way she moves. Understanding slowly dawned in Marcus's expression. Then horror. No. That's impossible. Elena Blackwood can't be. She has her mother's face. Dominic's voice cracked. She's Grace Blackwood's daughter. The woman I killed 15 years ago. Silence. The kind of silence that falls when the world shifts beneath your feet. The prophecy. Marcus breathed. The oracle's warning. When the rightful heir returns, the false king will fall. When the stolen heart awakens, all debts come due. When the alpha claims his broken mate, death walks for one and ruin for all. Dominic turned to face his beta. His oldest friend. The only person alive who knew the truth about what had happened 15 years ago. If I claim her, she dies. His voice was hollow. And if she dies, we all do. But the bond didn't break. The rejection failed. What does that mean? Dominic stared toward the healing tents, where the woman who should have been his queen lay unconscious and in agony. The woman whose mother's blood stained his hands. The woman the prophecy said would destroy everything. His mate. His doom. It means, he said quietly, that the moon goddess has a very cruel sense of humor. And we're all about to pay the price. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. Elena woke to fire in her veins. She gasped, jackknifing upright, and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her chest, radiating outward like cracks in glass. The incomplete bond throbbed with every heartbeat, a constant reminder of what had been done to her. What had been taken. Easy, child. Easy. Gentle hands pressed her back against soft pillows. Elena blinked, trying to focus. She lay in a canvas tent, afternoon sunlight filtering through the cream-colored walls. The scent of herbs filled the air. Lavender, sage, something sharper she couldn't identify. Medical equipment beeped softly nearby, an odd juxtaposition of modern technology and ancient healing. The woman leaning over her had silver hair braided down her back and kind eyes the color of amber. A healer. Elena could sense it in the calm energy radiating from her, the steady pulse of her wolf. Where am I? Elena's voice came out as a croak. The Wolf Park Infirmary. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. The healer pressed a cup of water to Elena's lips. Small sips. Your body has been through significant trauma. 18 hours. Elena drank, the cool water soothing her raw throat. Memories crashed back, the bleeding stones, the crowd parting, gray eyes finding hers across the amphitheater. The bond slamming into her like a freight train. And then, he rejected me. The words tasted like ash. The healer's expression softened with something like pity. Yes. Alpha King Valerius spoke the rejection rites. But it didn't work. Elena pressed her hand to her chest, where the bond still burned. Stretched and agonized, but unbroken. Why didn't it work? That's what we're trying to understand. The healer, her name tag read Dr. Sarah Whitmore, pulled up a rolling stool and sat beside Elena's bed. In my 40 years of practice, I've never seen a rejection fail to complete. The bond should have severed cleanly. Instead it's killing me slowly. Elena could feel it, the poison of an incomplete rejection seeping through her system. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat reminded her of what she'd lost before she'd even had a chance to have it. You should be dead. Dr. Whitmore said it plainly, without cruelty. Or at minimum, your wolf should have retreated so deeply you'd never access her again. That's what happens when a rejection fails to complete. The wolf can't survive the paradox. She either destroys her host or destroys herself. Elena reached inward, searching for her wolf. She'd spent years suppressing that part of herself, keeping her locked away in some dark corner of her mind. But now, her wolf lifted her head. Not cowering. Not whimpering. For the first time Elena could remember, her wolf felt awake. Alert. Watching and waiting with an intelligence that hadn't been there before. She's different. Elena whispered. My wolf. Something changed. Dr. Whitmore leaned forward, her amber eyes sharp. I ran extensive tests while you were unconscious. Your wolf is exhibiting energy patterns I've only read about in historical texts. Patterns that haven't existed since. Since when? The healer hesitated. Since the first pack. The original werewolves created by the moon goddess herself. Elena stared at her. That's impossible. Those bloodlines died out thousands of years ago. That's what everyone believes, yes? Dr. Whitmore stood abruptly, moving to check the monitors beside Elena's bed. Her scent had shifted, less calm now, edged with something that might have been fear. I've reported my findings to the council. They'll want to examine you themselves. The council. Elena's stomach dropped. The Werewolf Council governed all packs in North America. They were ancient, powerful, and notoriously ruthless when it came to anything that threatened the supernatural order. Why would they care about a rejected Omega? Dr. Whitmore didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. Elena wasn't just a rejected Omega anymore. She was something else entirely. Something that scared even a healer who'd seen 40 years of supernatural trauma. And somewhere out there, the Alpha King who'd rejected her knew exactly what that something was. Dominic stood at the window of his private cabin, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. He hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, the shock, the betrayal, the agony as the rejection tore through her. His mate. His curse. His wolf had been inconsolable since the ceremony, prowling and snarling in the depths of his mind. For the first time in 15 years, Dominic struggled to maintain control. The beast wanted out. Wanted to find her, claim her, mark her as his regardless of the consequences. She'll die, Dominic reminded his wolf. Like all the others. Is that what you want? His wolf's response was pure, anguished rage. A knock at the door pulled Dominic from his thoughts. Enter. Marcus slipped inside, closing the door quickly behind him. His beta looked like he hadn't slept either, dark circles under his eyes, his usually immaculate uniform rumpled. The council is demanding an audience, Marcus said. They want to know why you rejected your true mate in front of 3,000 witnesses. Let them demand. Dom, they're threatening to invoke the Alpha Challenge protocols. If you can't provide a valid reason. I have a valid reason. Dominic turned from the window. The same reason my father had when he rejected his true mate. The same reason my grandfather gave when he watched his fated one wither and die in his arms. The curse. The goddamn curse that had haunted his bloodline for 200 years. Dominic moved to the fireplace, where a portrait hung above the mantel. His ancestor, King Aldrich Valerius, painted in oils that had somehow survived 2 centuries. Aldrich looked proud in the painting. Powerful. But Dominic knew the truth. By the time of his death, Aldrich had been a broken shell of a man, driven mad by grief and guilt. Tell me the story again, Marcus said quietly. All of it. I need to understand what we're dealing with. Dominic had told him before years ago, when Marcus had first become his beta. But his friend was right. With Elena Blackwood lying in the infirmary and the council circling like vultures, they needed to remember exactly what they were fighting against. 200 years ago, Dominic began. King Aldrich was the most powerful alpha the Northern Territories had ever seen. He'd united warring packs, established the trade routes that still exist today, brought unprecedented peace to wolfkind. He was beloved. And arrogant, Marcus added. And arrogant, Dominic agreed. He believed his power made him untouchable. Invincible. So when a witch named Seraphina crossed into his territory seeking sanctuary, he saw only a threat. Her kind had warred with wolves for centuries. Her presence violated every treaty. Dominic touched the frame of the portrait, remembering the journals he'd read as a young prince. Aldrich's own words, describing what he'd done. He didn't just exile her. He made an example. Seraphina's mate. A wolf from a minor pack who'd broken every law to be with her, was executed publicly. Aldrich forced Seraphina to watch. Then he had her dragged to the border and thrown out like garbage. And she cursed him. She cursed his entire bloodline. Dominic's voice hardened. With her mate's blood still wet on the ground, she spoke words that have haunted every Valyrius king since. He didn't need to recite the curse. The words were burned into his memory, passed down from father to son like a poisoned inheritance. Every king shall find his true mate, and every true mate shall die within 1 moon cycle of the claiming. Their death will break the king, and his broken reign will end his people. Aldrich didn't believe her. Dominic continued. He'd already found his mate, a strong alpha female named Rosalind who'd ruled beside him for 20 years. He thought the curse was empty words, the desperate revenge of a grieving woman. But Rosalind wasn't his true mate. No. She was a political match. A good one, but not fated. Dominic turned away from the portrait. Aldrich's true mate came 5 years later. A young Omega named Catherine from the Eastern Territories. The bond hit them at a regional gathering, just like Elena. Aldrich was overjoyed. Dominic said bitterly. He'd grown to care for Rosalind, but a true mate bond, that was something else entirely. He claimed Catherine within hours. Marked her. Announced her as his queen. And she died. 28 days later. She simply faded. The healers couldn't explain it. She didn't age, didn't sicken in any normal sense. She just grew weaker and weaker until one morning, she didn't wake up. Marcus was silent for a long moment. And Aldrich? Went mad with grief. His reign collapsed within a year. He eventually walked into the forest, and never came back. They found his body 3 months later, half-shifted and frozen in the snow. The fire crackled. Outside, wolves howled as the moon began to rise. 3 generations, Dominic said. 3 alpha kings who watched their true mates die. My great-grandfather. My grandfather. My father. Your father rejected his mate, Marcus said. He never claimed her. No. He thought that would break the curse. If he never claimed her, she couldn't die from the claiming. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. He was wrong. She died anyway, slowly, painfully, driven mad by the incomplete bond. And my father spent the rest of his life drowning in guilt, wondering if he'd actually made it worse. That was the trap. Claim your mate, and she dies within a moon's cycle. Reject your mate, and she dies slowly, in agony, while you watch helplessly. Either way, the curse won. Either way, the king broke. I swore I would end this, Dominic said. When I took the throne, I swore I would find a way to break the curse before I ever met my true mate. I've spent 15 years searching. Consulting with witches, warlocks, anyone who might have answers. And I've found nothing. The curse is unbreakable. So when you saw Elena, I panicked. The admission cost him. Dominic Valerius didn't panic. Didn't lose control. But one look at that small Omega with her mother's face, and 200 years of preparation had crumbled to dust. I thought if I rejected her publicly, completely, maybe it would be different. Maybe a true rejection would spare her the slow death my father's mate suffered. But the rejection didn't complete. No. Dominic pressed his hand to his chest, where the bond still burned. The moon goddess has a twisted sense of humor. For 200 years my line has been cursed. And now she sends me a mate whose bond can't be severed. What does that mean? Dominic didn't answer. He didn't know. And that uncertainty terrified him more than anything else. Elena discharged herself from the infirmary against medical advice. Dr. Whitmore had tried to stop her, warning about the incomplete bond's effects on her system, the unknown changes happening to her wolf. But Elena couldn't stay in that tent another minute. Couldn't lie there helpless while the world whispered about the Omega who'd been publicly rejected by the Alpha King. She needed answers. And she knew exactly where to start looking. Her grandmother's belongings had been shipped to Wolf Park at Elena's request, arriving the day before the gathering. A single trunk containing everything Grammy had saved from their old life, photographs, journals, strange artifacts Elena had never been allowed to touch as a child. The trunk sat in Elena's assigned cabin, a small structure at the edge of the gathering grounds. Far from the Alpha quarters. Far from the ceremonial center. Exactly where an Omega belonged. Elena knelt before the trunk and lifted the lid. The scent of Grammy hit her immediately. Lavender and old books and something warmer underneath. Elena closed her eyes against the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. 3 weeks. Grammy had been gone 3 weeks, and Elena still expected to hear her voice when she walked into a room. Find what was stolen, Grammy had said. Promise me. Elena had thought she meant the gathering itself. That Grammy wanted her to find a mate, to reconnect with wolf kind after years of hiding among humans. But now, with ancient stones bleeding and her wolf transforming into something impossible, Elena wondered if Grammy had meant something else entirely. She began sorting through the trunk's contents. Photographs first, Grammy as a young woman, beautiful and fierce, standing beside wolves Elena didn't recognize. Grammy holding a baby that must have been Elena's mother. Grammy at some kind of ceremony, wearing robes Elena had never seen before. The robes caught her attention. Silver and white, embroidered with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light. Grammy stood in a circle of women, all wearing identical robes, all with their hands raised toward a full moon. Elena flipped the photograph over. On the back, in Grammy's careful handwriting, Keepers of the First Moon. Initiation Ceremony, 1962. Keepers of the First Moon. Elena had never heard of them. But something about the name resonated, settling into her chest like a key finding its lock. She kept digging. More photographs. A journal written in a language she couldn't read. Small tokens and charms that hummed with faint power. And at the very bottom of the trunk, hidden beneath a false panel, a bundle of letters tied with silver ribbon. Most of the letters had been burned. Elena could see the charred edges, the words destroyed by flame. But one had survived almost intact, a single page, the bottom half blackened but the top still legible. My dearest Elena, the letter began. Grammy's handwriting, unmistakable. If you're reading this, then I am gone, and you have finally come home to Wolf Park. I'm sorry for all the secrets. I'm sorry for binding your wolf, for hiding you among humans, for letting you believe you were something small and weak when you are anything but. Elena's hands trembled. Binding her wolf. Grammy had bound her wolf. You were never an Omega, my darling. You are something far more powerful, and far more dangerous. The daughter of the last true keeper, heir to magic that hasn't walked the earth in generations. I bound your wolf at birth to protect you, to hide you from those who would use you or destroy you. The words blurred. Elena blinked hard, forcing herself to focus. The curse that haunts the Valerius bloodline, I helped create it. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. Serafina was my sister in arms, and when Aldrich destroyed her mate, we wove the curse together, hoping it would bring justice for the innocent. But we were wrong. The curse became something we never intended. It's not just punishment anymore, it's become a cancer, growing darker with each generation, threatening to consume not just the Valerius line but all of wolfkind. You are the key, Elena. The curse and the cure wrapped in one. If the Alpha King claims you, you have the power to break the curse forever. But if he rejects you, if the bond remains incomplete, then the darkness we created will finally break free, and everything will burn. The rest of the letter had been consumed by flame. Elena stared at the charred edges, her mind reeling. She wasn't an Omega. Her wolf had been bound. Grammy had helped create the curse that haunted Dominic's bloodline. And somehow, impossibly, Elena was both the disease and the cure. Find what was stolen. Her wolf. Her power. Her birthright. Grammy hadn't sent her to the gathering to find a mate. She'd sent her to finish what she'd started 200 years ago. Elena stood on shaking legs. The bond in her chest pulsed with fresh pain, but beneath it, something else stirred. Her wolf, fully awake now, rising with power that had been locked away for 24 years. She had questions. Hundreds of them. And there was only one person who could give her answers. Dominic's cabin sat at the heart of the Alpha compound, a massive structure of logs and stone that looked more like a fortress than a residence. Guards flanked the entrance, hard-eyed wolves in tactical gear who tensed the moment Elena approached. I need to see the Alpha King. The guards exchanged glances. One of them, a scarred beta with a permanent scowl, stepped forward. The king isn't receiving visitors. He'll receive me. Listen, Omega. My name is Elena Blackwood. She met the guard's eyes, something she never would have dared a day ago. And unless you want to explain to your king why you turned away his mate, I suggest you let me pass. The word hung in the air. Mate. The guard's sense shifted, surprise, uncertainty, a flicker of fear. Everyone at Wolf Park knew about the rejection. Everyone had watched it happen. And everyone could feel the bond that still connected Elena to their king. The scarred guard stepped aside. Elena climbed the steps to Dominic's door. Her wolf prowled beneath her skin, restless and eager. For the first time in her life, Elena didn't try to suppress her. She let the wolf rise, let her power bleed through until her eyes glowed faintly gold in the darkness. She didn't knock. She pushed the door open and walked inside. Dominic stood at the fireplace, his back to her. He didn't turn, but she saw his shoulders tense. Felt the bond flare between them, that agonizing connection that refused to die. You shouldn't be here. His voice was rough. Tired. The council has rules about rejected mates approaching there. You know what I am, don't you? He went still. Elena moved deeper into the room, clutching the half-burned letter in her fist. That's why you really rejected me. Not to protect me from some ancient curse, though I'm sure that's part of it. But because you know what I am. What my grandmother was. What I could do to you and your entire bloodline if I actually came into my power. Slowly Dominic turned. His gray eyes found hers, and the bond screamed between them. Elena felt it like a physical force, the pull toward him, the desperate need to close the distance, to touch him, to complete what had been started. Her wolf howled with longing. But she held her ground. Tell me, she demanded. Tell me why you really rejected me. Dominic studied her for a long moment. The firelight played across his features, softening the harsh angles, revealing the exhaustion he'd been hiding. He looked like a man who'd been carrying an impossible weight for far too long. Because if I claim you, he said quietly, you have the power to either save my kingdom or destroy it. And I don't know which one you'll choose. Chapter 3. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. Elena stood frozen, Grammy's letter clutched in her hand, while Dominic's words hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. You have the power to either save my kingdom or destroy it. Explain, Elena said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Explain everything, or I swear to the moon goddess I'll walk out of here and figure this out on my own. Dominic moved away from the fireplace, pouring himself a glass of whiskey from a crystal decanter. He didn't offer her one. His hands, she noticed, weren't entirely steady. "How much do you know?" he asked. "I know Grammy helped create the curse. I know she bound my wolf at birth. I know I'm supposed to be some kind of key." Elena held up the charred letter. "The rest burned before I could read it." Dominic took a long drink. "Your grandmother was one of the keepers of the first moon. A secret order that protected the old magics. The powers that existed before pacts, before hierarchies, before the politics that govern wolfkind today. Most people believe they died out centuries ago. But they didn't. No. They went underground. Hid themselves among ordinary wolves, passing their knowledge down through bloodlines." He set down his glass and finally met her eyes. "Your grandmother was the last true keeper. And you are her heir." Elena's wolf stirred, pressing against her consciousness with new awareness. She could feel something shifting inside her, doors opening that had been locked her entire life. "What does that mean? Being her heir? It means you carry power that hasn't existed in generations. Power that predates the curse, predates the divisions between our kinds." Dominic's jaw tightened. "When I sensed you at the gathering, when the bond hit me, I felt it. This massive, dormant force coiled inside you like a sleeping dragon. So you rejected me out of fear. I rejected you because the curse corrupts everything it touches." His voice hardened. "3 generations of my line have watched their mates die. Each time, the curse grew stronger, darker, hungrier. If I claimed you, if the curse touched whatever power sleeps inside you, I wasn't just risking your death. I was risking the possibility that your corruption could destroy every wolf alive." Elena stared at him. She'd expected cruelty. Expected arrogance and cold calculation. She hadn't expected him to look so haunted. So broken beneath the icy surface. "That's what you tell yourself," she said slowly. "That's the noble version. But there's more, isn't there? Something you're not saying." Dominic's control cracked, just for a moment. Something raw and wounded flashed through his gray eyes before he locked it down again. "You're perceptive. I've spent 24 years learning to survive by reading people. Talk to me, Dominic. Give me the truth." He turned back to the fireplace, staring into the flames. When he spoke, his voice was distant, lost in memory. "Her name was Celeste. She was my best friend growing up, a beta's daughter, no one special in the pack hierarchy. We were inseparable as children. When we were 16, we realized we were in love." Elena's chest tightened. She didn't want to hear this. Didn't want to understand the man who'd rejected her in front of thousands. But she stayed silent, letting him speak. "I knew about the curse, of course. Every Valerius prince learns about it before we can walk. But I thought, stupidly, arrogantly, that I could beat it. Celeste wasn't my fated mate, after all. The curse only affected true mates. As long as I never found my true mate, I could be with whoever I chose. What happened? We planned to marry. We just announced our engagement when a visiting alpha from the Southern Territories came for a diplomatic meeting." Dominic's voice went flat. Celeste shook his hand, and the bond ignited. Elena closed her eyes. She could see where this was going. She was his true mate. Not mine. For 2 beautiful, terrible days she was the happiest I'd ever seen her. The Southern Alpha was kind, honorable, everything a mate should be. They planned to complete the bond at the next full moon. But the curse isn't limited to my mates. Dominic's laugh was bitter, broken. That's the part the history books don't mention. Seraphina's curse touched everyone I love. Celeste died 3 weeks after the bond was completed. She just faded. Exactly like my grandmother. Exactly like all the others. He finally turned to face Elena. In the firelight, she could see the weight of centuries pressing down on him. I've watched everyone I care about die. My father. My mother. Celeste. My beta's wife, who made the mistake of becoming my friend. Every wolf who gets close to me becomes a target for the curse's hunger. His gray eyes burned into hers. When I felt you at the gathering, when I realized you were my true mate, I knew I had to drive you away. For your sake. For everyone's sake. So you humiliated me publicly. Yes. Made me think I was worthless. That something was wrong with me. Yes. And you'd do it again. In a heartbeat. His voice cracked. Because the alternative is watching you die, Elena. And I won't. The window exploded inward. Elena screamed as glass shattered across the room, diving behind a heavy couch as dark shapes poured through the opening. Wolves in half-shifted form, their faces twisted with feral rage, their eyes glowing red in the firelight. Dominic moved faster than she could track. One moment he was standing by the fireplace. The next, he'd shifted into a massive black wolf, his jaws closing around the throat of the first attacker. Blood sprayed. The wolf went down, convulsing. But there were more. A dozen at least, flooding into the cabin with coordinated precision. This wasn't a random attack, it was an assassination attempt. Run! Dominic's voice echoed in her mind, the alpha command cutting through her panic. Get to the safe house. Northwest corner of the compound. Now. Elena scrambled for the door, but a gray wolf cut her off, lips pulled back in a snarl. She stumbled backward, her heart hammering. She had no weapons. No training. No way to defend herself against a fully shifted wolf twice her size. Her wolf surged. For 24 years, Elena had suppressed that part of herself. Kept her locked away in the darkness, following Grammy's instructions without understanding why. But now, with death lunging for her throat, the bonds Grammy had placed began to crack. Heat exploded through Elena's body. Her bones shifted, her muscles tore and reformed, her skin rippled with fur she'd never worn. She heard herself screaming, but the sound twisted into something else, a howl that shattered the cabin windows and sent every wolf in the room staggering backward. When Elena opened her eyes, she stood on 4 legs. Her paws were silver-white, glowing faintly in the darkness. Her fur shimmered like moonlight on snow. Power coursed through her veins, vast and ancient and terrifying, and every wolf in the cabin, attackers and Dominic alike, had frozen in place. Luna Prime. The words whispered through the bond, through the pack link, through some deeper connection Elena didn't understand. She saw the recognition in the attacker's eyes. The shock. The fear. And the hunger. Take her! Someone shouted from outside. Take her now! The gray wolf lunged. Elena's instincts took over. She moved without thinking, her new body flowing like water, her jaws snapping closed on the attacker's leg. The wolf howled in pain. Elena tasted blood and felt something dark and satisfied stir in her chest. Dominic reached her side, his massive black form pressing against her silver flank. Through the bond, she felt his shock, his awe, his desperate protective fury. Stay close, his voice commanded in her mind. Whatever happens, stay close to me. More wolves poured through the shattered windows, but they weren't attacking anymore. They were retreating, forming a defensive line around a single figure who stepped through the broken door frame. He looked like Dominic. The same sharp angles, the same gray eyes, the same powerful build. But where Dominic's presence felt like a winter storm, cold and overwhelming, this wolf radiated something darker. Something rotten beneath the surface. Well. The stranger smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. The rumors are true. Our dear Alpha King has finally found his mate. And what a mate she is. Dominic's growl shook the walls. Kieran. Brother. Kieran spread his arms wide, his smile sharpening. It's been too long. 200 years, if I'm counting correctly. You've done well with our father's throne. But then, you always were the favorite son. Elena felt Dominic's rage through the bond, so intense it nearly drowned her own fear. His half-brother. She'd read about Kieran in the histories. the bastard son who'd been passed over for the throne, who disappeared into the shadows after Dominic's coronation. "What do you want?" Dominic's voice was pure alpha command, enough to make the attacking wolves whimper and drop their gazes. But Kieran just laughed. "What I've always wanted. The throne. The power. Everything you stole from me because of an accident of birth." His eyes slid to Elena, and something predatory flickered in their depths. "And now, thanks to the moon goddess's twisted sense of humor, you've given me the perfect weapon." He stepped closer, ignoring Dominic's warning growl. His attention was fixed entirely on Elena. "Do you know what you are, little wolf? Do you understand what that silver fur means?" Elena's wolf snarled, but she felt young and untrained in this new body. She didn't know how to fight like this. Didn't know how to use the power flooding through her veins. "A Luna Prime," Kieran continued. "The female counterpart to an Alpha King. A legend that hasn't walked the earth in 1,000 years. Some say they were the moon goddess's chosen daughters. Some say they were weapons designed to end wars, or start them." He smiled, showing too many teeth. "And your mate bonded to my brother. How delicious. How absolutely perfect. Stay away from her." Dominic moved between them, his black fur bristling. "This is between us, Kieran. Leave her out of it." "Oh, but she's the whole point." Kieran's eyes glowed red in the darkness. "You see, I've made some interesting friends over the past 2 centuries. Witches. Warlocks. Even a few demons willing to deal. And one of them, a charming woman named Morgana, happens to be the direct descendant of Serafina herself." Elena felt Dominic's shock through the bond. "Serafina died childless," Dominic said. The histories are lies, written by the victors. Serafina had a daughter, hidden away before Aldrich could destroy her. That daughter had daughters of her own. And now Morgana has spent 200 years perfecting her ancestor's curse." Kieran's smile was vicious. "She's been waiting for this moment. For a Valyria's king to find his true mate. For the curse to finally reach its full potential." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the original curse was incomplete. A punishment, yes, but not enough to truly destroy your line. Morgana has found a way to finish what her ancestor started." Kieran's eyes fixed on Elena. "All she needs is for you to claim your mate. Complete the bond. Let the curse take root in that beautiful, powerful body." The pieces clicked together in Elena's mind. "You want to force him to claim me? Trigger the curse deliberately. Such a clever wolf." Kieran's voice was silk over steel. "The curse was designed to break the king when his mate dies. But a Luna Prime, a wolf carrying the power of the first pack? Her death won't just break Dominic. It will shatter him. Destroy his mind, his wolf, his ability to rule. And when he falls, I'll be waiting to pick up the pieces." Dominic lunged. The two brothers collided in a fury of teeth and claws, their wolves tearing at each other with centuries of hatred. Elena scrambled backward, her untrained paws slipping on the blood-slicked floor. The battle was brutal. Dominic was larger, more powerful, his black fur matted with blood as he drove his brother toward the broken window. But Kieran was fast and vicious, his attacks aimed to wound rather than kill, and his wolves were circling closer, waiting for an opening. Elena's power surged. She felt it building inside her, that ancient force Grammy had locked away for 24 years. It wanted out. Wanted to protect her mate, to destroy the wolves threatening him, to burn everything that stood against them. But she didn't know how to control it. Didn't know what would happen if she let it loose. "Elena." Dominic's voice cut through her panic. "Run. Get help. I'll hold them off." She felt his certainty through the bond. His willingness to die to give her time to escape. She also felt the truth he was hiding. He didn't think he would survive this fight. "No." The word came out as a growl. Elena planted her silver paws and let the power rise. Light exploded from her fur. The cabin blazed with silver radiance, so bright the attacking wolves screamed and covered their eyes. Kieran staggered back, his arms raised against the glare. "What?" he started. "Get out." Elena's voice echoed with power she didn't understand, resonating through every wolf in the clearing. It wasn't an alpha command, it was something older. Something that bypassed hierarchy entirely and spoke directly to the wolf inside each of them. The attackers fled. They couldn't stop themselves, their bodies responding to an authority that predated packs, predated kings, predated everything they'd ever known. They scrambled through the windows and disappeared into the night, leaving only Kieran standing alone in the ruined cabin. His eyes were wide with shock. And beneath the shock, Elena saw something that looked almost like delight. "Magnificent," he breathed. "Oh, Morgana is going to love you." Then he was gone, shifting into a gray wolf and vanishing into the shadows before Dominic could stop him. The silver light faded. Elena's legs buckled, her new body exhausted from the unexpected display of power. She felt herself shifting back, the transformation agonizing in reverse, until she lay naked and shivering on the blood-soaked floor. Dominic shifted beside her. She felt his hands, warm, gentle, desperately careful. Pulling a blanket from the couch and wrapping it around her shoulders. "Elena!" His voice was raw. "Elena, look at me!" She lifted her head. He knelt before her, still half covered in wounds from his fight with Kieran, and his gray eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Fear. Not for himself. For her. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. "You shouldn't have stayed. You would have died. That would have been my choice. And this is mine." She pulled the blanket tighter, fighting the shivers that racked her body. "You don't get to decide what I risk, Dominic. Not anymore." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and brushed a strand of silver-white hair from her face. His touch was feather-light, reverent, and Elena felt the bond pulse between them was something that wasn't pain. "A Luna Prime," he murmured. "In 1,000 years, there hasn't been one. And the moon goddess sends you to me." "Lucky you?" His laugh was broken, exhausted, but real. "Come on. We need to get you to the healers. And then? Then we figure out how to stop my brother before he destroys us both." The Wolf Park Council chamber was carved into the base of the mountain, a vast cavern lit by torches that cast dancing shadows on walls covered in ancient runes. 12 elders sat in a semicircle, their faces grave as they studied Elena. She'd shifted back fully, dressed now in borrowed clothes that hung loose on her frame. The incomplete bond still burned in her chest, but something had changed. Since her first shift, since the power had exploded from her in that wave of silver light, the pain had dulled to an ache she could almost ignore. Her wolf, too, felt different. Larger. More present. No longer a suppressed whisper but a full voice in her mind, observing everything with ancient, knowing eyes. Dominic stood beside her, his presence a solid wall of warmth at her back. He hadn't left her side since the attack, and Elena found she didn't want him to. The bond between them hummed with new awareness, not the agony of rejection, but something more complicated. More dangerous. "A Luna Prime," Elder Miriam said. She was the oldest wolf Elena had ever seen, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes sharp despite her age. "We never thought to see one in our lifetime." "None of us did," another elder agreed. "The last Luna Prime died 1,000 years ago, fighting alongside the Alpha King to seal the demon rifts. Since then, the line has been dormant." "Not dormant." Elder Miriam shook her head. "Hidden. Protected by the keepers of the first moon. They knew the Luna Primes would be hunted if their existence became known. So they bound the bloodline, suppressed the power, kept it sleeping until it was needed." "My grandmother," Elena said. "She bound my wolf at birth. To save your life." Elder Miriam's eyes softened with something like sympathy. "The keepers knew Morgana was searching for the last Luna Prime. They knew if she found you, she would use you to complete her ancestors' curse. So they hid you among humans, suppressed your wolf until you were nothing but a weak omega no one would notice. Elena thought of her grandmother, the secrets she'd kept, the lies she told to protect her granddaughter. The weight of that love pressed against her chest. What can a Luna Prime do? Dominic asked. His voice was controlled, but Elena felt his tension through the bond. How does this change things? Elder Miriam exchanged glances with her fellow elders. Then she rose, moving to a stone pedestal where an ancient text lay open. Luna Primes are the female counterpart to Alpha Kings, equal in power, equal in authority. In the old days, they ruled together. The Alpha King led the pack in matters of war and politics. The Luna Prime was the spiritual heart, the connection to the moon goddess, the keeper of old magics, the healer of wounds that couldn't be healed by ordinary means. She turned a page, revealing an illustration that made Elena's breath catch. A white wolf, glowing with silver light, standing beside a massive black wolf. Between them, a broken chain lay shattered on the ground. The Luna Prime's greatest gift was her ability to break bonds. Curses. Spells. Even mate bonds that had gone wrong. Elder Miriam looked up. According to this text, a Luna Prime can break any magical binding, including the curse that haunts the Valerius bloodline. Hope flared in Elena's chest. She felt Dominic go rigid beside her. How? His voice was barely a whisper. The text describes a ritual. The Luna Prime and her mate must complete a full bonding ceremony. Not just a bite, but the ancient rites that haven't been performed in centuries. At the moment of completion, when their souls are fully intertwined, the Luna Prime can use that connection to reach the curse itself. To tear it out by the roots. But the curse, Dominic started, would activate the moment you claim her, yes. Elder Miriam's face was grave. The ritual requires a complete bond. And a complete bond means Elena would be fully subject to the curse's effects. Elena felt the weight of what they were saying settle onto her shoulders. To break the curse, she had to let it infect her first. She had to gamble her life on a ritual no one had performed in 1,000 years. The previous mates, she said slowly. The ones who died. They weren't Luna Primes. No. They were ordinary wolves, with no defense against the curse's corruption. Elder Miriam's eyes met hers. You are something different, Elena. Your power predates the curse, predates even the witch who cast it. In theory, you have the strength to survive long enough to complete the ritual. In theory. Yes. We cannot promise you survival. We can only tell you that you are the first wolf in 200 years who has any chance at all. The chamber fell silent. Elena stared at the ancient illustration, the white wolf and the black wolf, standing together against the darkness. Dominic's hand found hers. She felt his conflict through the bond, the desperate hope warring with 200 years of watching everyone he loved die. I can't ask you to do this, he said quietly. I won't ask you to risk your life for a curse that isn't your fault. Elena turned to face him. The Alpha King who'd rejected her. The man who'd pushed her away to save her. The wolf who carried 2 centuries of grief like chains around his heart. You didn't ask, she said. I'm choosing. Something cracked in his expression. Something that had been frozen for a very long time. Elena, your brother is going to come for me. He'll try to force the claiming, trigger the curse, destroy you. We both know I can't run forever. She squeezed his hand. This is the only way. The ritual. The full bond. We finish what the moon goddess started when she matched us. And if you die? Then I'd die fighting. I'd die trying to save you, and your people, and every wolf Morgana's curse would eventually touch. Elena's voice didn't waver. That's a death worth having. Elder Miriam cleared her throat. There is one more thing you should know. The ritual requires complete trust between mates. Complete openness. If either of you holds back, if there are secrets or walls between you, the bond will not be strong enough to channel the Luna Prime's power. Elena felt Dominic's hesitation. She understood it. He'd spent 200 years building walls around his heart, protecting himself from the pain of loss. Tearing those walls down wouldn't happen overnight. But they didn't have overnight. They had days, maybe weeks, before Kieran and Morgana made their move. Then we'd better start practicing, Elena said. They stood outside the council chamber as dawn broke over Wolf Park. The attack had thrown the gathering into chaos. Wolves were packing up, fleeing back to their territories, afraid of what might be coming. Elena watched them go and felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. All these wolves. All these lives. They depended on her and Dominic finding a way to stop the curse before it destroyed everything. I need to tell you something, Dominic said quietly. She turned to him. In the early morning light, he looked younger than his centuries. More vulnerable. The curse has been getting stronger. Every generation, every mate who died, it fed on that pain. Grew darker, hungrier. He swallowed hard. 3 years ago, my beta's wife was diagnosed with a wasting illness. No cause, no cure. She'd become my friend, and the curse touched her because of it. Did she survive? Barely. But only because I cut her out of my life completely. Refused to speak to her, acknowledge her, even be in the same room. It broke Marcus's heart, but it was the only way to save her. His voice roughened. That's why I'm cold, Elena. That's why I push everyone away. Because caring about people gets them killed. Elena reached up and touched his face. He flinched but didn't pull away. You've been so alone, she whispered. I had to be. Not anymore. She held his gaze, letting him see the truth in her eyes. We do this together, Dominic. All of it. No more walls. No more pushing away. His hand came up to cover hers. She felt the tremor in his fingers, the fragile hope he was afraid to let himself feel. If this fails, then it fails. But at least we'll fail together. For a long moment, they stood there, the bond pulsing between them with something that wasn't pain anymore. Something that felt like the first fragile shoots of something real. Then Dominic leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. Together, he agreed. And somewhere in the shadows of Wolf Park, Kieran Valerius smiled and began planning his next move. Chapter 4. The Alpha King's compound sprawled across 50 acres of protected forest, a fortress of stone and timber that had housed Valerius rulers for 3 centuries. Elena's new quarters occupied the east wing, close enough to Dominic's chambers that the bond hummed constantly between them, far enough that propriety was technically maintained. It was torture. Elena woke on her 3rd night drenched in sweat, her body burning with a fever that had nothing to do with illness. The incomplete bond pulsed in her chest like a second heartbeat, demanding something she couldn't give. Her wolf paced restlessly, whimpering for their mate, for the completion that would either save them or destroy them. She threw off the covers and stumbled to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the moon hung heavy and full, its silver light painting the forest in shades of gray. 3 days. 3 days of living in Dominic's home, breathing his scent, feeling his presence through the bond like a constant ache. They'd been careful to maintain distance, separate meals, separate training sessions, separate everything. But the bond didn't care about careful. The bond only knew hunger. A knock at her door made her jump. Elena? Dominic's voice, rough with exhaustion. I felt you wake. Are you? She opened the door before she could stop herself. He stood in the hallway wearing nothing but sleep pants, his chest bare, his dark hair disheveled. His gray eyes were fever-bright, and she could see the sheen of sweat on his skin. The bond was affecting him too. I can't sleep, she admitted. The bond. I know. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she was beginning to recognize. The incomplete rejection is destabilizing. Our wolves are trying to force completion. Is that what this is? Because it feels like I'm dying. You're not dying. But his voice lacked conviction. The healers said the fever should pass in a few more days. Our systems just need to adjust. Elena laughed bitterly. Adjust to what? Being bound to each other but unable to complete it? Being close enough to touch but knowing that touching could kill me? Dominic's jaw tightened. This is why I tried to reject you. Why I wanted you to leave. And yet here we are. Here we are. They stood in the doorway, the bond screaming between them. Elena could feel his need as clearly as her own, the desperate, consuming hunger that the mate bond created. Every instinct told her to reach for him. To close the distance. To let the bond complete and damn the consequences. We should. She started. Yes. He stepped back, putting space between them. We should. Good night, Elena. He was gone before she could respond, disappearing into the shadows of the compound. Elena closed her door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. 3 more days until they could begin the ritual preparations. 3 more days of this exquisite torment. She wasn't sure she would survive it. Training began at dawn. The compound's practice grounds occupied a natural clearing behind the main house, ringed by ancient oaks that had witnessed generations of wolves honing their skills. Marcus, Dominic's beta, oversaw Elena's instruction with patient determination. Again, he said as Elena stumbled through another attempt at controlled shifting. Feel the change, don't force it. Elena growled in frustration. Her wolf wanted to emerge fully, to burst forth in that explosion of silver light she'd experienced during the attack. But that kind of uncontrolled power was dangerous. She needed precision. Control. I'm trying, she gritted out. You're thinking too hard. Your wolf isn't a separate entity you need to wrestle into submission. She's you. Let her move through you instead of against you. Easy for him to say. Marcus had been shifting since he was 12. Elena had spent 24 years suppressing her wolf entirely. Learning to work with her now was like trying to befriend a wild animal that had been caged its whole life. She closed her eyes and reached inward. Her wolf was there, waiting, a presence of silver light and ancient power. Elena approached her carefully, not demanding but asking. Help me, she thought. Show me how to do this. Her wolf responded with an image, water flowing over rocks. Not fighting the obstacle, but moving around it. Adapting. Flowing. Elena let her wolf flow. The shift rippled through her, gentle this time instead of explosive. She felt her body reshape itself, bones restructuring, muscles realigning, fur sprouting along her skin. When she opened her eyes, she stood on 4 silver-white paws. Better, Marcus said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Much better. Now hold it. Holding was harder. The power wanted to surge, to explode outward the way it had against Kieran's wolves. Elena breathed through it, focusing on the flow, on the water over rocks image her wolf had shown her. 1 minute. 2. 3. Excellent. Marcus crouched before her, his eyes warm with approval. You're a natural, Luna. Once your power settles, you'll be formidable. Luna. The title felt strange, but not unwelcome. Elena shifted back, the transformation smoother now, and wrapped herself in the robe Marcus offered. Again? She asked. Rest first. You're still recovering from the bond fever. Elena nodded, moving to the bench at the clearing's edge. She was reaching for her water bottle when she felt him. Dominic stood at the tree line, watching her. He wore training leathers, a sword strapped to his back, and his gray eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that made her skin flush. He'd been watching her train. Every day. He thought she didn't notice, but the bond made it impossible to miss his presence. Your form is improving, he said, stepping into the clearing. Marcus is a good teacher. He is. Dominic moved closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. But you have natural talent. Your grandmother trained you, before she bound your wolf. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded slowly. She used to take me into the woods behind our house. Showed me meditation techniques, breathing exercises. I thought she was just being eccentric. I didn't realize she was preparing me for this. The keepers were thorough. They planned for everything. Not everything. Elena looked down at her hands. She didn't plan to die before she could explain any of this to me. Dominic was silent for a moment. Then he sat beside her on the bench, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me about her," he said quietly. "Your grandmother." Elena smiled despite herself. "She was fierce. Even after she lost her wolf, even after she became human, she never lost that fierceness. She raised me alone after my parents died. Taught me to be strong, to be independent, to never rely on anyone else for my survival. She sounds remarkable." "She was." Elena's voice cracked. "And I had no idea what she'd sacrificed for me. All those years I thought she was just a stubborn old woman with strange beliefs. I didn't know she'd given up her wolf, given up everything, to keep me hidden." Dominic's hand found hers. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm, the bond flaring with desperate hunger. But beneath that hunger was something gentler. Something like comfort. "The people who love us make impossible choices," he said. "My father rejected his mate to save her. She died anyway, but he never regretted trying. Never stopped believing he'd made the right choice. Do you think he did?" "I think there are no right choices when it comes to the curse. Only different kinds of pain." Elena turned to face him. In the morning light, with his guard down and his hand warm in hers, he looked almost approachable. Almost human. "Is that why you rejected me?" she asked. "Because you thought any choice would end in pain, so you might as well choose the one that protected me?" His jaw tightened. "I rejected you because I'm a coward. Because watching you die would destroy me in ways the curse could never manage." "That's not cowardice, isn't it?" His gray eyes met hers, and she saw the centuries of grief swimming in their depths. "I've lived 200 years, Elena. I've watched everyone I love die. At some point, self-preservation becomes indistinguishable from cowardice. Or survival becomes indistinguishable from strength." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he raised his free hand and touched her face. Elena's breath caught. The bond exploded with sensation, need, hunger, desperation. But also something else. Something warmer. Softer. "You're impossible," he murmured. "You're completely impossible. So I've been told." His thumb traced her cheekbone. His eyes dropped to her lips. The distance between them shrank until she could feel his breath on her skin. "Dominic! Alpha!" A guard burst into the clearing, skidding to a halt when he saw them. His face flushed red. Forgive me, there's been a development. Elder Miriam requests your presence immediately." Dominic dropped his hand and stepped back, his expression shuddering. "What kind of development?" "The healer, sir. Dr. Whitmore. She's asked to speak with you and the Luna. She says she has information about the curse." Elena's heart stuttered. Dr. Whitmore. The kind healer who'd treated her after the rejection. What could she possibly know about the curse? "We'll be there shortly," Dominic said. The guard nodded and retreated. Dominic turned to Elena, his face carefully blank. "Whatever this is," he said, "we face it together." "Together," she agreed. But her wolf stirred uneasily, sensing something neither of them had anticipated. Dr. Sarah Whitmore waited in Dominic's study, standing before the fireplace with her hands clasped behind her back. In the warm light, she looked different than Elena remembered, older somehow. More tired. "Thank you for seeing me," she said as they entered. "I know this is unusual. You said you have information about the curse." Dominic's voice was cool, professional. "I assume you mean the Valerius curse. Among other things." Dr. Whitmore took a deep breath. "Before I continue, I need to tell you something. Something that will change how you see me." Elena felt Dominic tense beside her. "My name isn't Sarah Whitmore. That's an identity I created decades ago, when I went into hiding." The healer straightened her shoulders. "My real name is Seraphina Blackwood, I'm the direct descendant of the witch who cursed your bloodline. Silence. Dominic moved so fast Elena barely saw him. One moment he stood beside her, the next he had Serafina pinned against the wall, his hand around her throat. Give me one reason, he snarled. Not to end you right now. Because I'm not your enemy. Serafina didn't struggle. Her amber eyes met his without fear. I've been trying to contain the curse for 200 years. I've been trying to fix my ancestor's mistake. Your ancestor murdered 3 generations of my family. My ancestor cast the curse in grief after watching your ancestor butcher her mate. She wanted justice. She never intended for things to go this far. Then explain. Dominic's grip tightened. Explain what your family's curse has done to mine. Let her speak, Elena said quietly. She could feel the truth in Serafina's words, or at least the truth as Serafina believed it. Her wolf confirmed it, reading the other woman's energy with newfound clarity. Please, Dominic. We need to hear this. Dominic held Serafina's gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he released her. Talk, he commanded. And pray your explanation is good enough. Serafina rubbed her throat. The curse my ancestor cast was meant to be a punishment, nothing more. 3 generations of heartbreak to match the 3 centuries of life she'd expected to share with her mate. After that, it should have faded. The Valerius line would have been free. But it didn't fade, Elena said. No. Because the curse was never truly my ancestor's to control. Serafina moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames. She cast it using old magic, power she didn't fully understand. And that power had its own agenda. What do you mean? Curses like this one. True curses, cast with blood and grief and ancient forces, they're not just spells. They're entities. They have their own consciousness, their own desires. Serafina's voice dropped. Over time, the curse evolved. It stopped being a punishment and became a prison. Dominic's eyes narrowed. A prison for what? For the Luna Prime bloodline. Elena went cold. Serafina turned to face them. The curse was never about killing mates alpha. That was just a side effect. A way to cause pain while accomplishing its true purpose. The curse exists to prevent the birth of a Luna Prime. To stop the wolf who's destined to unite all packs under one rule and end the constant wars. Why would anyone want to prevent that? Elena asked. Because unity would mean the end of the old ways. The end of the power structures that let certain wolves, and certain supernatural entities, profit from conflict. Serafina's expression hardened. The force that infected my ancestor's curse isn't interested in wolf politics. It feeds on war. On pain. On the chaos that endless conflict creates. You're saying the curse is possessed? I'm saying the curse has become something far worse than my ancestor ever intended. And anyone who tries to wield it, anyone who tries to use its power, becomes infected by the same darkness. Elena thought of Kieran. Of his red glowing eyes and the rottenness she'd sensed beneath his surface. Kieran, she said. He stole part of the curse's power. Is he possessed? Partially. The darkness has been whispering to him for years, promising him the throne if he helps it complete its purpose. Serafina's eyes met Elena's. That purpose is you, Luna Prime. You're the first one to be born in 1,000 years, despite the curse's best efforts. Your grandmother didn't just bind your powers, she hid your very existence from the curse itself. How is that possible? Because she gave up her wolf to do it. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd known, had read in Grammy's letter, that she'd sacrificed something to create the binding. But hearing it spoken aloud made it horrifically real. The binding spell required a catalyst. Serafina continued gently. Something powerful enough to mask a Luna Prime signature from an entity that had been hunting her kind for centuries. Your grandmother offered her wolf, her connection to everything supernatural. As payment. She became human so you could remain hidden. Elena's eyes burned. She thought of Grammy in those final years, fragile, aging, so terribly mortal. She'd always wondered why her grandmother had seemed so different from other wolves, so disconnected from the supernatural world. Now she knew. The pack, Elena whispered. Grammy said the pack disbanded? But that wasn't true, was it? Seraphina's face clouded with old grief. Your pack didn't disband, Elena. It was destroyed. Systematically hunted by forces loyal to the curse, trying to eliminate anyone who knew about your true identity. Your grandmother scattered the survivors and went into hiding with you, but the curse's servants found most of them eventually. My parents? Died protecting you. They led the curse's hunters away so your grandmother could escape with you. Their sacrifice bought you 24 years of freedom. Elena couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Everything she believed about her history, about her family, was built on blood and sacrifice she'd never known about. Dominic's hand found her shoulder. She felt his strength flowing through the bond, steadying her. Why tell us this now? He asked Seraphina. Why reveal yourself after all these years? Because Kieran forced my hand. He knows I've been working against him. He's been trying to capture me for months, hoping to use my bloodline connection to strengthen his control over the curse. Seraphina's expression hardened. And because the three of you need to know what the ritual actually requires. The ritual to break the curse, Elena said. Elder Miriam told us. Elder Miriam told you what the ancient texts say. But those texts were written before the curse became possessed. The ritual requires more than just the full mate bond. Seraphina began pacing. To truly break the curse, you need three things. First, blood of the cursed line, that's you, Alpha. Your blood, freely given, to acknowledge the wrong your ancestor committed. Dominic nodded grimly. Second, tears of the Luna Prime shed in genuine love. Not the compulsion of the mate bond, that's not enough. Real love, freely chosen, for the wolf who carries the curse. Elena felt her cheeks flush. She and Dominic had known each other for less than a week. The mate bond burned between them, yes, but love? Real love? That took time. That took trust. And the third component? Dominic asked. Seraphina stopped pacing. The heart of the one who holds the curse's anchor. The living vessel that keeps the curse tethered to this world. Kieran, Elena said. He has part of the curse. No. Kieran has power he stole from the curse, but he's not the anchor. The anchor has to be someone connected to the original casting. Someone of my bloodline. Seraphina's amber eyes met Elena's. For 200 years, that anchor has been me. The silence stretched. Elena heard her own heartbeat, felt the bond pulsing, sensed Dominic's shock rippling through their connection. You, he said flatly. You've been maintaining the curse for 2 centuries. Containing it. There's a difference. Seraphina's voice didn't waver. When my ancestor died, the curse needed a new anchor or it would have dissipated. I was young and stupid and thought I could control it, thought I could slowly weaken it from the inside until it faded on its own. By the time I realized the darkness couldn't be controlled, only contained, it was too late. Why didn't you just let it dissipate? Because a dying curse doesn't fade quietly. If I'd let go when my ancestor died, the curse would have lashed out in its death throes. Every wolf touched by its influence, every Valerius who'd ever lived under its shadow, would have died in agony. Seraphina's voice broke. Your father. Your mother. Everyone in your bloodline for 3 generations back. I couldn't let that happen. Dominic stared at her. Elena felt his emotions churning through the bond, rage, confusion, something that might have been grudging respect. So to break the curse, he said slowly, we need your heart. Literally. Yes. You're offering to die. I've been waiting to die for 200 years, Alpha. Seraphina smiled sadly. Every day I've lived has been borrowed time, paid for by the suffering of your family. If my death can finally end this, then it will have been worth it. Elena stepped forward. There has to be another way. Some other anchor we could There isn't. Serafina took Elena's hands. I've spent centuries looking for alternatives. The curse is too deeply rooted. The only way to tear it out is to destroy its anchor entirely. Her amber eyes softened. But before that can happen, you need to fulfill your part of the ritual. You need to love him, Elena. Really love him, not just a mate bond's compulsion. And that kind of love takes time. Time we don't have, Dominic said grimly. Kieran won't wait forever. Then we'll just have to. The explosion rocked the compound. Elena stumbled, grabbing the edge of Dominic's desk for balance. Alarms blared. Through the window, she saw flames rising from the western wall. They're here. Dominic was already moving, shedding his human form as he ran. Elena, stay with Serafina. Get to the safe room. Dominic. He was gone, a massive black wolf tearing through the compound toward the breach. Elena felt his determination through the bond, his fierce protective fury. Come! Serafina grabbed her arm. We need to move! They ran through the compound's corridors, the sounds of battle growing louder. Wolves howled. Glass shattered. Elena caught glimpses of fighting through the windows, Dominic's guards clashing with Kieran's forces in a fury of teeth and claws. This way. Serafina pulled her toward a hidden door. The safe room is through here. The wall exploded inward. Elena threw herself backward, shifting on instinct, her silver wolf emerging in a blaze of light. Through the smoke and debris, she saw a massive gray wolf stalking toward them. Kieran. His eyes glowed red in the darkness. His lips pulled back in a terrible smile. Hello, little Luna, he said, his voice echoing in her mind. Did you miss me? Serafina stepped between them, power crackling around her hands. You won't have her, Kieran. I won't let you complete the curse. Oh, Serafina. Kieran laughed. You've been playing games for 200 years. But your time is up. He moved faster than Elena could track. One moment he faced them. The next, his jaws closed around Serafina's shoulder, tearing her away and flinging her against the far wall. She crumpled and didn't rise. Now. Kieran turned back to Elena. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your choice. Elena's wolf snarled. She felt her power building, that silver light gathering beneath her fur. She could fight. Could try to hold him off until Dominic reached them. But through the bond, she felt Dominic falling. Felt the curse's darkness wrapping around him as Kieran's wolves overwhelmed his defenses. Felt his agony as he fought against impossible odds. If she fought, Kieran would kill him. The curse would complete in the worst possible way, and everything would be lost. Choose, Luna Prime. Kieran's voice was almost gentle. Come willingly and I spare your mate's life. Fight me and watch him die. Elena looked at Serafina's crumpled form. Looked toward the battle where Dominic was losing. Looked at Kieran, with his red eyes and rotting soul. And she shifted back to human form. I'll come, she said. But you have to pull your wolves back. Now. And you don't touch him again. Kieran's smile widened. Done. He raised his head and howled. The sound echoed across the compound, and Elena felt the battle stutter and stop. Through the bond, she felt Dominic's confusion, then his horror as he realized what she'd done. Elena and oh. I'm sorry, she sent back. I love you. I'm sorry. Then Kieran's wolves surrounded her, and everything went dark. Chapter 5. The cursed hollow existed outside of normal space, a wound in the fabric of the world where Serafina's ancestor had torn reality apart 200 years ago. Elena felt it the moment Kieran's wolves dragged her through the boundary, a wrongness that seeped into her bones, making her wolf howl in protest. The hollow was a crater of dead earth surrounded by twisted trees that had stopped growing centuries ago. At its center stood a stone altar, black as midnight, carved with symbols that writhed and pulsed with sickly light. The air tasted like copper and ash. Beautiful, isn't it? Kieran stood at the altar's edge, his gray eyes reflecting the corrupted magic that permeated this place. This is where it all began. Where my grandmother's grandmother spilled wolf blood and called down a curse that would echo through eternity. Elena's hands were bound with silver chains that burned her wrists. She'd been forced into human form, stripped of her wolf strength, but she could still feel the bond pulsing in her chest. Dominic was alive. Furious and desperate and coming for her, but alive. You know this won't work, she said. Even if you force the claiming, I'll never submit to you. The curse needs a complete bond. Oh, sweet Luna. Kieran smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. You still don't understand, do you? I don't need your submission. I just need your power. He gestured, and two of his wolves dragged a figure forward. Elena's heart clenched when she recognized Serafina, barely conscious, blood matting her silver hair. The anchor, Kieran continued. The lovely Serafina has been containing the curse for 2 centuries, thinking she was protecting everyone. But containment works both ways. All that power, all that potential, locked inside her like a battery waiting to be drained. What are you planning? The original curse was meant to kill mates and break kings. Useful, but limited. Kieran began circling the altar, his fingers trailing across the ancient stone. But over time, the curse evolved. It gained awareness. Hunger. And it whispered to me, Elena. Showed me what it could become if only someone was brave enough to set it free. The symbols on the altar flared brighter. Elena felt something stir in the hollow's depths. A presence, vast and old and utterly wrong. The curse wants to become real. She breathed. It wants to become corporeal. Now you understand. Kieran's eyes glowed red. A Luna Prime's death releases more magical energy than any other supernatural event. That power, combined with Serafina's anchor and my own blood claim, will give the curse everything it needs to manifest. To become something that can hunt and feed and grow. And you think you'll control it? I think it will reward me for my service. Kieran's smile turned savage. The throne. The power. Everything my brother stole from me. Elena looked at the altar, at Serafina's crumpled form, at the twisted trees reaching toward a sky that held no stars. She thought of Dominic, fighting his way toward her through whatever forces Kieran had left behind. She thought of her grandmother, who had given up everything to hide her for 24 years. She thought of the mate bond, incomplete and agonizing, stretching between her and the man she was beginning to love. Love. The word settled into her chest like a key finding its lock. She did love him. Not just the compulsion of the bond, though that burned fierce enough, but the man himself. The grief he carried like armor. The tenderness he hid behind ice. The way he'd held her through her nightmares, asking nothing in return. She loved him. And that meant she could complete the ritual's second requirement. Now she just needed to survive long enough to use it. Dominic tore through the forest like a force of nature. His wolf had never run so fast, never pushed so hard. The incomplete bond screamed in his chest, a constant reminder of Elena's fear, her determination, her stubborn refusal to give up even in the face of impossible odds. She'd surrendered herself to save his life. She'd walked into Kieran's hands knowing what he would do to her. And that sacrifice, that impossible, infuriating, beautiful sacrifice, had broken something open inside him that he'd kept locked away for 2 centuries. He loved her. He'd known it the moment she'd touched his face in the training grounds, looking at him like he was something worth saving. He tried to deny it, tried to convince himself it was just the bond, just instinct. But the truth burned through his defenses like sunlight through shadow. He loved Elena Blackwood. And he would tear apart anyone who tried to take her from him. Marcus ran beside him, flanked by their most loyal wolves. Behind them came an unexpected force, wolves from a dozen different packs who'd stayed at Wolf Park despite the chaos, who'd rallied when they heard the Luna Prime had been taken. And at the rear, moving with surprising speed despite her injuries, came Serafina. She'd regained consciousness shortly after Kieran's retreat, and she'd insisted on joining the rescue. I'm the only one who knows how to reach the cursed hollow, she'd said. And I'm the only one who can destroy the anchor properly. Dominic hadn't trusted her. Still didn't, entirely. But Elena needed them both, and he would ally with his worst enemy if it meant getting her back. The boundary is ahead, Serafina called. Be prepared. The Hollow doesn't want us there. Dominic felt it before he saw it, a wall of wrongness that made his wolf recoil. But he pushed through, letting his love for Elena burn away his fear. The barrier shattered around him like glass. He emerged into the hollow and saw her. Elena stood before the altar, her wrists bound with silver, her white dress torn and stained. But her eyes blazed with defiance, and her wolf, he could feel it through the bond, was very much awake. Kieran turned to face him, and Dominic saw his half-brother's eyes glow with borrowed power. Ah, dear brother! How touching that you came! Dominic shifted to human form, needing his voice for what came next. Let her go, Kieran. This is between us. It was never just between us. It was always about the curse. About the power our ancestor denied me when he chose his legitimate son over his bastard. Kieran's face twisted. 200 years I've waited for this moment. 200 years of watching you rule what should have been mine. Our father's choices weren't Elena's fault. Let her go and face me. Oh, but she's essential. Kieran moved to the altar, his hand closing around a curved blade that gleamed with dark magic. Her power will birth something magnificent. Her death will fuel my ascension. And you. His smile widened. You get to watch. Dominic felt the curse stir in the hollow's depths. It was vast, so much larger than he'd realized, and it was hungry. 2 centuries of pain and death had fed it well. Elena. He reached for her through the bond, pouring everything he felt into that connection. I'm here. I'm not leaving you. I know. Her voice rang clear in his mind. I have a plan. But you're not going to like it. Tell me. The curse can't be broken from outside. I have to accept the bond fully, draw the curse into myself, and destroy it from within. Horror flooded through him. No. Elena, no. That could kill you. It might. But it's the only way. Her mental voice softened. I love you, Dominic. Not just the bond, I love you. The man who carries 2 centuries of grief and still finds the strength to care. The king who rejected his mate to save her life. I love all of it. Elena. Complete the bond. Trust me. Please. Kieran raised the knife. The curse's presence swelled, pressing against the boundaries of reality, desperate to break free. And Dominic made his choice. No. Kieran paused. No? You want to force a claiming? Fine. Dominic strode forward, ignoring the wolves that moved to block him. But you don't need to force anything. I'll do it willingly. Kieran laughed. You think completing the bond will save her? It will kill her. The curse can try. Dominic reached Elena and took her bound hands in his. I've spent 200 years running from this. From love, from connection, from anything that might hurt. I let fear rule me. Let the curse win before it even touched us. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing her burned wrists. No more. I'd rather die beside my true mate than live another century without her. Dominic. Tears streamed down Elena's face. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her. Not gently, there was no time for gentle. He poured 2 centuries of loneliness into that kiss, 2 centuries of walls crumbling at last. He felt the bond ignite between them, golden and fierce, completing the circuit that had been broken since the rejection. The curse struck. Dominic felt it like a tidal wave of darkness, crashing into their newly formed bond. It tore at the golden threads, trying to corrupt them, trying to poison what they'd built. He felt Elena's life force begin to drain, felt the curse's hunger reaching for her Luna Prime power. But Elena wasn't fighting it. She was drawing it in. Now, she said through their bond. Now it's inside me. And now I can destroy it. Silver light exploded from her skin. The chains binding her wrists shattered. Elena shifted into her Luna Prime form, but this time the light didn't fade, it grew. Brighter and brighter until Dominic could barely look at her. Through their completed bond, he felt what she was doing. She'd pulled the curse into herself, trapping it within her power the way a pearl forms around an irritant. Now she was crushing it, using the ancient magic of the Luna Prime to destroy what no ordinary wolf could touch. But the curse fought back. It was old and strong and desperately hungry. It clawed at Elena's consciousness, trying to corrupt her light, to turn her power to its own purposes. Dominic felt her weakening, felt the darkness starting to overwhelm her. Elena. Elena, take my strength. Use me. The anchor, she gasped. We need to destroy the anchor or it will just reform. Serafina! Dominic roared. The witch stepped forward, her amber eyes ancient with grief and determination. In her hands she held a small object, a stone that pulsed with sickly light. My ancestor bound her heart to the curse when she cast it, Serafina said. Not her physical heart, her heart of power. She crystallized it, thinking it would give her control. Instead, it became the curse's anchor to this world. She looked at Elena, at the silver wolf struggling to contain an entity that had grown for 2 centuries. I've carried this burden long enough, she said. Time to let it go. She raised the heartstone and brought it down against the altar. The stone shattered. The curse screamed. Dominic felt it through the bond, a shriek of rage and hunger and dying malice. It thrashed inside Elena, trying to find purchase, trying to survive. But without its anchor, it had nothing to hold on to. Now, Elena said. Help me. Give me everything you have. Dominic shifted into his wolf form and pressed his black body against her silver flank. Through their completed bond, he felt their wolves merge, 2 consciousnesses becoming one for a single transcendent moment. His strength became hers. Her light became his. Together, they were more than wolf. More than mortal. They were the union the moon goddess had always intended, Alpha King and Luna Prime, darkness and light, perfect balance. And in that perfect balance, the curse couldn't survive. Elena's light blazed nova bright. The curse burned away like shadow before the sun, 2 centuries of darkness dissolving into nothing. Dominic felt it die, felt the weight he'd carried his entire existence finally lift. Then the light faded, and Elena collapsed. She woke to warmth. Dominic lay beside her, his arms wrapped around her, his breath soft against her hair. The bond hummed between them, whole and golden and utterly uncorrupted. They were in his bed, in his compound, and sunlight streamed through windows that had been repaired since the attack. How long? She whispered. 3 days. His arms tightened around her. You almost died, Elena. Your heart stopped twice. But it didn't stay stopped. No. His voice cracked. Because I refused to let you go. I held on to the bond so hard I thought it would break me, and I kept you tethered to this world by sheer stubbornness. Elena turned in his arms, facing him. His gray eyes were red-rimmed, shadowed with exhaustion. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Because he probably hadn't. The curse? She asked. Gone. Completely. Serafina confirmed it. There's no trace left. Not in me, not in the hollow, not anywhere. He touched her face like she was something precious. You did it. You broke the curse that destroyed my family for 200 years. We did it. Together. Together. He smiled, and it transformed his face. I could get used to that. Elena kissed him, soft and slow, savoring the taste of freedom. The bond sang between them, full of light and promise. What about Kieran? She asked when they finally broke apart. In custody. When the curse died, it took the power he'd stolen. He's just an ordinary wolf now, facing pack justice for his crimes. Dominic's expression hardened. The council will decide his fate, but I don't intend to be merciful. And Serafina? Recovering. Destroying the Heartstone nearly killed her, but she's strong. Stronger than any of us realized. He paused. She wants to stay at Wolf Park. Says she has 2 centuries of damage to try to repair. Elena nodded slowly. There was still so much to process, so many implications to work through. But right now, in Dominic's arms, with the bond whole and bright between them, she felt something she hadn't felt since her grandmother died. Home. The council wants to see you, Dominic said. The Pax want to see you. The whole supernatural world is waiting to meet the first Luna Prime in 1,000 years. That sounds terrifying. It probably will be. His smile turned soft. But you won't face it alone. Never again. Elena pulled him close, breathing in his scent. Pine and snow and something warmer underneath. Never again, she agreed. Wolf Park had been transformed. The gathering grounds where Elena had first arrived, where she'd been publicly rejected, where the mating stones had bled, now blazed with lights and celebration. Thousands of wolves had gathered from across the continent, drawn by rumors of the curse's breaking and the Luna Prime's rise. Elena stood at the edge of the ceremonial platform, wearing silver and white, the colors of her Luna Prime heritage. The incomplete rejection had left scars, faint silver lines on her wrists where the bond had torn, but she wore them with pride. Battle scars from a war she'd won. Dominic stood beside her, resplendent in the black and gold of his kingship. The weeks since the curse's breaking had been chaos, councils and ceremonies and an endless parade of dignitaries demanding audiences. But through it all, the bond had held them steady. And through it all, their love had grown. Not just a mate bond, though that burned bright as ever. Real love, built on shared trauma and midnight conversations and the slow, patient work of learning each other's hearts. Elena knew his grief now, and he knew her fears, and together they were building something neither had thought possible. A future. Elder Miriam stepped forward, her voice carrying across the silent gathering. 3 weeks ago, the mating stones bled for the first time in 3 centuries. They announced the return of power we thought lost forever, the Luna Prime, daughter of the first pack, chosen of the moon goddess herself. The crowd murmured. Elena felt their attention like a physical weight. Today, we gathered to recognize what was begun in chaos and completed in sacrifice. Today, we witnessed the formal bonding of Alpha King Dominic Valerius and Luna Prime Elena Blackwood. The murmur grew to a roar. Wolves howled their approval, the sound echoing off the mountains until the whole world seemed to be singing. But Elena's attention was fixed on Dominic. He was looking at her with something she'd never seen before, not longing, not need, but absolute certainty. The certainty of a man who'd finally found what he'd been searching for. 3 weeks ago, he said, his voice carrying across the gathering, I stood on this platform and rejected my true mate. I told myself it was to protect her. Told myself I was being noble. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I was afraid. The crowd went silent. I was afraid of the curse. Afraid of losing another person I loved. Afraid that after 2 centuries of grief, I didn't have anything left to give. He stepped closer to Elena. I was wrong. He sank to one knee. Gasps rippled through the gathering. An Alpha King did not kneel, not to anyone, not for anything. But Dominic knelt before his mate like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I rejected you to save your life, he said quietly, his words meant for her alone but carrying across the silent crowd. But you saved mine instead. You saved all of us. And I will spend the rest of my existence making sure you never regret it. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. The bond blazed between them, golden and whole and full of promise. Get up, she whispered. Is that a royal command? It's a request from your mate. She reached down and pulled him to his feet. I don't want you kneeling before me. I want you standing beside me. Equal. Together. Together. He agreed. And then he kissed her. The wolves howled their blessing to the moon, thousands of voices raised in celebration. The mating stones, silent since that first bloody night, began to glow, soft silver light emanating from their ancient surfaces. Not bleeding this time. Shining. A sign that the age of darkness was over. A sign that the Luna Prime had finally come home. When they finally broke apart, breathless and laughing, Elena looked out at the gathered wolves and saw hope. After 2 centuries of fear and grief and loss, hope was returning to the supernatural world. Because of her. Because of Dominic. Because together, they'd broken the unbreakable. So what now? Dominic murmured against her hair. We've defeated the curse, saved the kingdom, united the packs. What's left? Elena grinned. I was thinking we could start with a honeymoon. His laughter rang out across the gathering grounds, bright and free and completely unguarded. The sound of a man who'd finally learned how to be happy. And in his arms, Elena knew she'd found exactly what her grandmother had sent her to discover. Not just what was stolen, but what had been waiting for her all along. Home. Family. Love. A future worth fighting for. Far from the celebration, in the scarred earth of the cursed hollow, something stirred. The altar stood empty now, its dark power drained. The twisted trees had begun to straighten, reaching toward a sky that once again held stars. Life was returning to a place that had known only death for 2 centuries. But deep in the soil, where the curse had died, something remained. Not the curse itself, that was gone forever, burned away by Luna Prime light. But the curse had been old, and powerful, and in its death, it had left behind something new. A seed. A whisper. A promise of things to come. The Luna Prime has risen, it breathed into the darkness. The balance has shifted. The seals have weakened. The whisper grew stronger, feeding on the residual magic that soaked the hollow soil. Now wake the Luna Fallen. Somewhere in the world, something ancient opened its eyes. And smiled. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.